All right. Well, welcome to another edition of Jesus for Mormons. I am Kai Van Leuven, and I spent over 30 years in the Mormon church. And this is my story of what I did after leaving the church.
I'm Di Beals, and I'm your friend, and I'm a pastor at Venture Church, and I'm along for the ride to hear your story and react to it.
All right. Well, we have a really exciting episode today. I'm really excited because
I'm nervous.
You're nervous?
No, not really.
Well, we gave there's a little we're playing out a part of the temple ceremony that was taken out in 1990. So people like me have never heard it. People who are born in the 80s and late 70s have never heard this.
Why was it taken out?
So the temple ceremony is like a relic. It's like tips its hat to Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and kind of their theology. And as it, in my opinion, as it's become less and less culturally acceptable, the things that they have in there, they've decided to edit out over the years. And so this is one of those things that they edited out. Now, this is my thing with the temple. The church claims that it isn't secret, but it's sacred, Di. It's not secret. Everything that happens in there is not secret, but it's sacred. And so I am not trying to disrespect the church. I'm not trying to, but I think this has context to what we're talking about. And so I'm also somebody who doesn't pull any punches with how I feel.
True.
So as some of you may not know. So I'm not going to kind of compromise my mission because people feel that this might be off limits, because I don't feel that way.
Right.
I feel that it's totally within, especially something that I never even saw in the temple, but I read about online and was able to kind of research. And so a lot of you know that the temple endowment was Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, that they received by revelation. I will put that in quotes, by direct and divine revelation. So some people, if you really think of it that way, it's not even a translation. It would be more pure in the Mormon sense than even the Book of Mormon, because that was translated, quote unquote.
Oh, yeah.
And so these are kind of this look back into the past of what Mormonism looked like, a really long time ago, which is interesting. I may be holding back some words so that I don't sound disrespectful, but there are things in it where you watch it and it isn't conventional. It isn't like something that even is comfortable. I think a lot of people come out of it and say, "What was that? Like, what did I just go through?" And I'm trying to be as respectful as I possibly can, but the temple doesn't sit right with a lot of people who go through it. And I think about the original endowment was probably so much more strange. I'm trying to pick my word kindly. So much more strange than what it is today. So this was taken out of the temple endowment. It existed for over 100 years in the endowment, but in 1990 it was taken out.
Okay.
Along with some other things. The blood oath atonements were also taken out at that point, which is a whole other can of worms. And so what I wanted to do is I could not find a video. I would love it if somebody produced a video that I could just show of this.
Yeah.
Just this section. You can find the whole endowment online.
Really?
Yeah. So a guy went in, and I don't necessarily endorse this guy. I think he's a little bit fringe, but he went in with a little recorder.
Oh, I know.
Recorded.
I've read all his books.
You have?
Yeah.
I don't.
And that's why I've never brought him up, because I know he's got some strikes against him.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And so there's kind of some fringe people who did that. I think that's a little bit disrespectful. Because it's just doing it just to kind of exploit something that a lot of people do find to be sacred.
Yeah.
So anyways, so there's this was taken out in 1990, but this is the scene of a Protestant minister talking with Adam, and the devil, Lucifer, is there as well. And so the way I wanted to set this up is we have a Protestant minister, Di Beals, so
Sure.
she will be playing that. We brought in a young, full of life voice in Judah.
Hello.
Yes, and Judah will be playing Adam in this scene. And then I'm playing the part of, well, what many active members of the church might think I am.
Sure.
Lucifer. Hey, why not?
Okay.
So the role I was born to play.
Oh,
No,
boy.
just kidding. No, maybe I took it a little too light on that one. Okay, so we're gonna go through this. My wife told me to take this more seriously, so here I am. Serious cut.
I'm very serious also.
Yeah, there you go.
Serious
Okay.
face.
Yes.
Serious face.
Okay.
So we are going to do this, and we are going to start off. So I just want to set some context to this for those of you who have been through the temple. Adam and Eve have just gotten kicked out of the Garden of Eden. They're out in the lone and dreary world, or as some of you might know this, Missouri.
Oh,
There's a little crack for you, a little Adam on Diamond Mormon history stuff.
okay.
You want to go there, Di?
Nope.
Not today? Okay. So they're out in Missouri. That's the theology.
It is dreary.
That's Mormon theology is that
Yeah.
Adam and Eve were in Missouri.
That's where the Garden of Eden is?
That's where the Garden of Eden is. Just think on that one while we go through this.
I-
So Jackson County.
The Tigris and Euphrates have been renamed.
We won't get into that. Di.
Okay.
So Adam. So we're going to start off. Adam and Eve are out in the lone and dreary world. They already, partook of the fruit. God cast them out of the garden.
Okay.
This is all in the temple endowment. Then Adam's kind of on his own. And we pick up with Adam and Lucifer having a conversation. And so go ahead.
I am looking for messengers.
Oh, you want someone to preach to you. You want religion, do you? I will have preachers here presently. And so then it says that Lucifer turns his head as a Protestant minister approaches. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
The preacher turns and looks into the camera.
A fine congregation.
Yes, they are a very good people. They are concerned about religion. Are you a preacher?
I am.
Have you been to college and received training for the ministry?
Certainly. A man cannot preach unless he has been trained for the ministry.
Do you preach the Orthodox religion?
Yes, that is what I preach.
If you will preach your Orthodox religion to these people and convert them, I will pay you well.
I will do my best.
Lucifer guides the preacher to Adam and Eve, who stand nearby. Here is a man who desires religion. He is very much exercised and seems to be sincere. As Lucifer presents the preacher to Adam and Eve, he steps back and observes the ensuing conversation. The preacher is made to sound sincere, although misguided and credulous. Adam appears humble, faithful, and immovable in his determination to serve God. He is not swayed by the preacher and is astounded by the doctrines espoused by the preacher.
I understand that you are inquiring after religion.
I was calling upon Father.
I'm glad to know you are calling upon Father. Do you believe in a God who is without body, parts, or passions, who sits on the top of a topless throne, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere, who fills the universe and yet is so small he can dwell in your heart, who is surrounded by myriads of beings who have been saved by grace, not for any act of theirs, but by his good pleasure? Do you believe in such a great being?
I do not. I cannot comprehend such a being.
That is the beauty of it. Perhaps you do not believe in a devil, and in that great hell, the bottomless pit, where there is a lake of fire and brimstone into which the wicked are cast, and where they are continually burning, but none never consumed?
I do not believe in such place.
My dear friend, I am sorry for you.
All right. So that cuts off that segment. It does go on, but it's kind of a similar vibe. And so I just kind of wanted to cut
Snapshot.
it off there. Yeah, this is just a snapshot. I'm not looking at doing the whole, how long is it? 2+ hour endowment. That is,
Whoa.
Oh no.
yeah. Okay. So I am not planning on doing that. But so Di, what's kind of your initial reaction to this, or what are kind of some of your
Well, my
thoughts?
first reaction is I am ironically and sort of hilariously unqualified to play this part because no woman can hold this role. So that is just ironic. But also, why just this piece taken out? Which maybe would make more sense if I knew what came before it and what came after it. But what's the most offensive thing in here? Because I imagine that all of it might be confusing. So why just this part?
I think what's interesting about this is that, and are you asking why this part in the podcast or why this part in the temple?
In the temple.
I think it's to draw this us versus them mentality.
Okay.
Like, one of us is following God and really looking for God, and one of us is following what man would say is God, which isn't God, which is working hand in hand with Satan.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So then why was it taken out? Is it because it still would be a belief, correct? Am I taking this in a direction you weren't planning to go?
No, I think that's a good question. It's not something that I wrote down, but I think there was a lot more of us versus them mentality in the church, like early on.
Yes.
And they existed in really a bubble, right? They're in Utah, they're in Salt Lake, and it is any outsider who comes here, like, we want nothing to do with them.
Okay.
Unless they just give us money to buy supplies to go to California. Like, aside from that, we don't want anything to do with their theology. We see them as enemies to us. I mean, that's the general vibe I get. If people feel differently than that, then feel free to comment on that. But I think it definitely draws a line in the sand of, like, what we preach in the church is so vastly different than any other. I actually looked up what the term orthodox means. So Lucifer said, do you preach the orthodox religion?
Yeah.
And what orthodox, I just looked it up in the Webster's dictionary. It means conforming to what is generally or traditionally accepted as right or true. So it's kind of this general religious system.
According to that belief system. Like, you'll find orthodox in probably every religious system, and it is the most fundamental of beliefs.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought, is just that it's like, hey, we're sticking to it.
Yeah. It's like a double down.
Very rigidly.
Yeah.
Which I was a little surprised on the definition that I found online, which was this generally or traditionally accepted of what's right or true, which seems a little bit universally, but maybe it's not.
It's probably not quite strict enough for a religious context, specifically this religious context. I feel like if you were to look at Judaism, an Orthodox Jew are the ones in the most traditional dress who are following the letter of the law.
Yeah.
So that's my understanding of Orthodox.
Yeah. And so I think the general idea that I wanted to get out of this is that even though I did not go through the temple with kind of this idea in mind, the people who were teaching me had gone through the temple. Like, my parents had gone through prior to 1990, right? So they kind of have this idea. And I think that works its way into the teachings that you have, and the kind of the idea of us versus them, right? God's church versus Satan.
Right.
And on this Satan side is also pastors and ministers of other churches, right? And I don't think that's I mean, if you look at who's on whose side here,
Yes.
it's not like, well, Lucifer, God's one true church, the Mormon church, and there's a lot of gray here.
Right.
Which I think sometimes can be religion. I think religion can be in this gray. I don't know, Di. Hopefully that's not
No,
deeply
I
offensive
agree.
to you.
No, I agree.
It's very much cut between
The one true
one
church,
true church,
Mormonism,
Satan,
everything else.
and religious leaders
Yeah.
over here. And I think that's from my experience, and maybe I haven't experienced enough Christian churches, but from my experience, it's just not true, right? From my experience, and I'm not trying to suck up to you, Di. I'm not really wired that way. But the thing is from here, I've kind of experienced a whole different world, and I'm kind of going off to the side, like people who are really sincere about their belief and about their faith, and who are actively pursuing God all the time, right? Like it's a pursuit for their life. That's veering off of what we're kind of talking about here. But I wanted to talk about this idea of mental space.
Yeah.
And kind of this, a lot of people who leave the church, they say, yes, I was hardwired to believe certain things, but I think they hold on to other ideas that maybe hold them back from faith, that hold them back from a relationship with God. And so I wanted to kind of pivot to this really wild story of me and my profession. So I'm a landlord. I bought a piece of property that had 12 units. It's an apartment complex. It had 12 units, and I had to turn it over it was really bad. Like, I remember the first time we pulled up there, after signing the paperwork. So we bought it and we're excited. I don't know if...
Had you not seen it yet?
No, I had seen it.
Okay.
But, there's still just this buzz. Like, hey, I just put the money down. I just signed all the paperwork. Like, let's go see it. So I remember me and my wife went. I think we had a minivan, and we pull in to the parking lot. And this place is rough. Like, there's like 15 abandoned cars, like all along the front of it. One car somebody took a brick and smashed the front windshield. And so it's like, all messed up. So we go in there, and like my wife's like, hey, I don't really even want to drive into the parking lot. Like, it was one of those situations. So I parked kind of out on the street, and then I walked in. One of the doors was wide open to one of my units, which I'm like, well, I own this now. I should probably close the door.
Uh-huh.
I go, and there's a guy standing there inside the unit. And I look at him and I say, hey, man, I just bought the place. I'm trying to be nice. I was like, you got to get out of here. I got to like lock it up. And he literally just stared at me.
Oh.
I walk in and he's still staring at me. And I'm like, I should probably walk out of here. So anyways, there's some very interesting, he didn't leave. I left because I was freaked out. But I had to turn over tenants there. I had to there was one unit where there was an older gentleman renting from me. He left. He went into a nursing home, and his son moved in with his girlfriend. And he left. Once he moved in, he stopped paying rent, which is obviously, I'm not in the business of free rent for people.
Right.
And there was a lot of things going on in that apartment. Let's just say there was a lot of activity and a lot of different
unsavory activities.
Okay. Let's just put it that way. So I'm trying to get them out. And the best way to do it is just talking with people, negotiating with people, just trying to find like a win-win. Like, this obviously isn't going to be a long-term stay if you can't pay rent. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a long-term play. So they wanted me to sign this statement, and I wasn't going to do it. Let's just put it that way. I'm not going to get into the legalities of it, but I called my attorney and I said, hey, I want to know if I can sign this statement just to appease them, to try to like get them out. And he's like, if you sign that statement, you're toast. Okay. So, and mind you, I'm alone. I'm 45 minutes away from my house. We're kind of in a rural area, it's not really like there's not a lot of backup here in case things, and I knew that this person had maybe some drug activity. So let me set the stage on who I'm negotiating with. The guy's probably 300 pounds.
Oh, okay.
He's 6 foot, probably 6'2". I mean, not muscular pounds, but still pounds. And I'm 5'7", 150. I'm not that anymore, but 150 pounds. And I have quite a bit of moxie to me. Like I'm like, I don't need help. I'm just gonna go talk to this guy. So I knock on his door to give him back this statement that it's like, dude, and I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, I can't sign this. Like it won't work out. How can we come up with a plan to like get you guys out so that it works for everybody? And all of a sudden his girlfriend, who's like over here on the couch, starts yelling at me. And I'll edit this for this podcast. She starts saying, Kai, we know you've been talking trash about us. And she starts yapping at me. And I'm like, hey, I'm not, this isn't like a personal thing. This is just like, you're not paying rent. We have to kind of work through this. And I look up at her boyfriend. I look up at her boyfriend, and his like mouth, like you can tell, like he's just starting to get enraged with me.
Oh
like,
no.
His mouth starts going like this, like, and I'm like, oh, dude, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
So I don't know what that means. So
Did you get in your wrestling stance and get ready to shoot the legs?
He's 300 pounds.
I mean, you could take the legs out. He'd probably land on you.
I've done enough backyard boxing to know.
You knew you were outgunned.
There's no way.
Okay.
I mean, that guy doesn't even have to know what he's doing to wail on me. So so I'm there and I see his mouth move and I'm like, and then he takes one step forward and I'm like, oh crap. Like I know, like once you take that step, I know that you are in fight mode.
Yeah, he's engaged.
And so I'm like, hey man, like this isn't really something I want to get into. Like it's all good. We'll just talk about this another time. He takes another step. There's like a little shopping cart. You know the mini shopping carts that you can have? This dude picks up the shopping cart. Overhand, like Donkey Kong style, and throws it at me and hits me with it. And I'm like, oh, like he's not messing around anymore. Like, and I'm backing up and I'm backing up and I'm backing up until my back is up against a fence. And like I touched it and I was like, all right, well, I guess I gotta go. Like, I guess I gotta fight this dude. So he's like, once my back hit the fence, for some reason he turned around like to look back, and I was just like, boom, I'm gone. I ran as fast as I possibly could. I was out of there.
That was a wise move.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to square up with this guy. I'm just so overmatched, So I ran to the neighbor's house, called the cops. I was like, dude, I don't want to get wailed on by this 300-pound dude. Like, I'm just too small.
Yeah.
And not even that. If he was my size, I probably shouldn't get in a fight with this guy. So I run, the cops come, he rides off on a bike, which is kind of a funny scene to think about. So he rides off on a bike, and I'll tell you, that situation like really messed with me. From then on out, my interactions with tenants, like that guy still to this day rents some space in my mind. Like if I know there's a sketchy situation that like I don't want anything to do with, I will call the cops and say, hey, I'm meeting with this person. I know this person has a record. I know this person is violent. I know this person's on drugs. Like, can you be in the area? Hey, friend, I need you to come with me to do, like, I don't go one-on-one if I know it's even 1% sketchy.
Yeah.
Right? Because that situation is still lingering with me and made me change the whole way that I approach my business. Right. And so I think about these examples that we've talked about of like a lot of people who leave the church, they can say, yes, I think it's false. Yes, I think that Joseph Smith did things that just benefited him in his theology. But there's also things that I believe that they hold on to that rent space in their mind for free. that
Yep.
don't allow them to accept religion, don't allow them to think that there is anything outside of the church. And what I think is so tragic about that is that that's the theology of the church.
Yeah.
They're still holding on to that theology.
Yeah. That everyone else is wrong and there's no other way.
Yeah, that over here is the one true church.
Yep.
And over here is Satan and all everything else.
Yeah.
Right? And so in a way, they're still buying into that theology.
That's so good. That's so good. You're right.
That's how I feel. And maybe, I don't think I'm wrong, actually.
Yeah.
I would say
don't
maybe
either.
I think I'm wrong. But if you look at how many people leave the church and what religious system they go to, and a lot of them go to atheism, agnosticism, nihilism, which is kind of a religion.
Yeah.
If you want to exist,
it's a belief system.
People, Why they're in this camp? They're in what the church said they would be in.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to, know how else to say it. I don't know what and just like how that guy was renting space in my mind and still does. Still, I don't want to get beat on by a 300-pound dude.
Mm-hmm.
I got kids and I got a wife that I want to go home at the end of my workday. And it made me change everything. I think that people still hold on to those things. They still hold on to those ideals. And so I wrote down a few questions, and I'm going to have to get this queued up here, Di.
Okay.
Because my screensaver went on.
While you're doing that, I do think that illustration will probably stick with me for a really long time. And I'm not even from the Mormon church, but I think it's such a vivid illustration. I don't even have anything profound to add to it. I think it speaks for itself and stands for itself. I do think it's almost a brilliant. I don't even want to give credit to any human mind that thought far enough ahead to think, look how we can implant this idea that will stick with people forever. But it's almost a brilliant tactic. Once you leave, you've become everything we said you would become, and you're on the other side. I don't think anyone thought far enough ahead to think that how brilliant of a tactic that was, but it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't
your questions.
Okay.
That's when the words might come out.
That's when Kai gets really unhinged. So on to these questions. So these are the questions, and these are rhetorical for people who have left the church and who have left anger and bitterly, like I'm not casting judgment at them. But is religion outside the Mormon church, as Brother Wilcox put it, play church? Is every church outside of the Mormon church play church? Okay. Do you think that spiritual leaders outside of the church do it just for the money?
Is that actually a statement, a belief, a truth?
Oh yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Wilcox said, how do I say this, Di? There was a wedding that was going to be performed by a pastor. I'll try to get the clip. And he said that he would change it. He would change the ceremony if the pastor got a little bit more money to do this ceremony differently. I'm kind of butchering this because this is off script. So that they were all corrupt. Di, you threw me for a loop here.
Sorry.
That they're just, or that they're doing it just for themselves, that pastors are doing it just for themselves, or spiritual leaders, and that they were, as Joseph Smith's history put it, all corrupt, right? Do you hold on to some of the doctrines that you were taught in the church that undermine or pull out the foundation from Christianity, from the validity of the Bible, from, what authority exists within the church, and you believe that everyone outside of that holds no authority at all? and this is the last question, which I think is the most important. Has the Mormon church poisoned your spiritual well?
Hmm.
Right? Has what has been taught to you, because it is so, accept it. Sorry, I was using this hand the whole time. Accept it or reject it and join Satan.
Right.
Has that poisoned your spiritual well of like wanting to find something outside of it?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How could it not? How could it not poison the well?
I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one. Like, I mean, we've done 3 episodes here about like, and these are not fringe doctrines. Like, this is not in 1885, some Quorum of the 12 guy that no one's ever heard of said this. These are like very one's from the temple, one's from a current high up leader in the church, and one is from Joseph Smith history that most of us have memorized, right? Like, these are not fringe ideas. And so I think that it's just like everything else. Like, when you think about like bias, when you think about like why people have different feelings towards people, whether whatever those are, right? Like, you can look at their upbringing. You can look at what they've been taught, where they've,
what they've heard around the house or in the church.
Yeah. Or in their environment.
Yep.
Right. Like, if you grow up in an area where you've never seen a blank person, insert whatever that is.
The foundation of prejudice.
Yeah. Racial, sexual orientation, all these different things. You're going to create in your mind something. And especially if you're told, hey, everyone else is on Satan's side. Mm-hmm. Everyone else is an abomination to God. Every other church is that way. I think it's pretty easy to see like where people go. And what I think is unfortunate about that is that they are buying the theology that broke them is the theology that they're still holding on to.
Yeah.
Right? The theology that they say, like, I don't agree with this at all. I think it's all made up. I think it's all garbage. That's what they're still, in a way, holding on to theologically.
That's just so good. I have nothing to add. So good.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Bravo. Amen.
All right. Well, and I'm not trying to like gotcha people, but I'm just saying, like, if you really look at this, if you really look at what it is, I think that's why so many people are angry. And I think there's one little bunny trail I wanted to go down. The church will often complain about how there is so much opposition, right? And there's so much, like, people are so angry with the Mormon church.
Non-Mormons?
No.
Ex-Mormons?
Ex-Mormons.
Okay.
Why ex-Mormons are so angry and bitter after they leave. And really, if you look at like what tools they were given for movement outside of the church, like after they leave, what tools are they given? Wilcox said, Brother Wilcox said, your life will have no value and no merit. Like, so you're trying to tell me that those people are going to go peacefully after giving up 2 years of their life, after paying tithing for years and years, after feeling guilt and shame for leaving? You think those people are just going to be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm just going to go off and No, like, those people are angry and they're upset. And unfortunately, you've already planted in their mind where they're going to go theologically.
It's like it's on a super oversimplified analogy. It's like you were given a pair of glasses when you were in the Mormon church and you left the Mormon church, but your glasses are still on. You're going to, and I know where you're going in your story for our next episode, at least a little. So I know that you brought those glasses to the next group of people you met. And it's not your fault that you forgot you were wearing them, that your lens you're looking through is very colored by your previous beliefs and experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really important point. And I think it's I think it's also important to say, like, I interact with a lot of ex-Mormons who are really angry and really upset. And like, really, I just have compassion for those people because I realize, like, in a way, I'm still angry and upset.
Mm,
I still have those feelings inside me, right? Of like, oh, this institution that I feel like took some things from me.
yeah.
And so I honestly do. Like, I have a ton of compassion for people where I'm like, oh, this person's really ticked off. And I bet you they've had like a lot of the same experiences that I have. And so this is really like my point to anyone is that if you really do want to abandon those beliefs, like fully abandon them, and don't hold on to, hey, I was kind of done wrong in this,
Yeah.
in this religious system, and I want nothing to do with God from here on out. I that would be kind of my what I would beg people.
It feels really hard to make yourself sort of a clean slate, to explore or be curious or even be willing to consider trusting God or a religious system.
Yeah. Well, it's my wife and I, when we parent my son, we talk about this idea of a wrinkled up piece of paper. I don't know if you've ever heard this, where we'll talk about that if my son is mean to my daughter, which he's older, so it kind of happens that way. He's kind of wrinkling up her paper. And when he says he's sorry,
Yeah.
he's smoothing out the paper,
But the wrinkles never go away.
but the wrinkles are still there.
Yeah.
And I think that, and so we treat the situation differently. And I think it's the same way with people who leave the church, right? Like, you still have those wrinkles in your spiritual paper, let's say, for this example. You still have those. And I think it's important to recognize those, like, in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to say, like, I do have these feelings, and they can be like easily justified by my like upbringing and my background. And I'm not trying to say that they're okay.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to say that they can exist, and that you were probably wired a little bit to feel that way, and to have those feelings.
So self-awareness would be a good first step.
I think so.
That recognition, rather than ignoring them or trying to shove them away, recognizing I've been, on a grand scale, I've been indoctrinated.
Sure.
But at least on a small scale, I'm carrying some wrinkles.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. I would challenge people, don't let that theology continue to rent space in your mind.
Yeah. Good.
And I think that hopefully we've done kind of this topic justice. The next topic is kind of fun because it is me in practice with this theology renting space in my mind. And so you get to hear me go after a Protestant preacher, a Protestant minister.
Can't wait.
So anyways, until next time.
Yep. Can't wait.
All right.